The initial waves of the Zorvani invasion were a blur of terror. No one had expected it to happen so quickly. Cities around the globe fell within days. First, it was the capital cities, New York, London, Tokyo, each struck with precision. Massive spherical ships appeared in the skies, casting shadows over the planet's most iconic landmarks. The ships fired beams of energy that vaporized buildings, their heat pulses scorching entire swaths of land. The human military, for all its advancements, was powerless against the invaders' technology. General Samuel Reyes was on the front lines of the chaos. A veteran of countless wars, he had faced insurgencies and foreign threats before, but nothing prepared him for the Zorvani. These aliens didn't just come with superior weaponry, they came with ruthless efficiency. The Zorvani had studied humanity in detail, identifying weaknesses in their defense systems, predicting their every move. Earth's military was shattered, unable to organize any meaningful resistance. Entire bases were wiped off the map in a matter of hours. Reyes barely escaped the initial bombardment of his command center in Washington, D.C., but the sight of his fallen comrades stayed with him, those he had failed to protect. It was in the aftermath of that failure that he realized the truth. Earth wasn't going to win this war the conventional way. The Zorvani had come to conquer, not negotiate. As the invaders consolidated their hold over Earth, humanity's resistance began to form in secret. Reyes knew that any hope of salvation rested on unity, on organizing survivors from every corner of the globe. He reached out to his former allies, military officers, scientists, and engineers, knowing that their skills and knowledge would be critical in the fight to come. For a time, their efforts were small, sabotaging supply lines, disrupting communications, stealing scraps of Zorvani technology. But each success fueled something deeper, the spark of rebellion. Reyes led a small team of fighters, gathering intelligence on the Zorvani and learning from their mistakes. One such mission led to the discovery of a crucial vulnerability, a Zorvani transport ship that had crashed just outside the ruins of what was once Chicago. The ship was badly damaged, but still contained valuable tech that could help level the playing field. Reyes knew this would be a high-risk operation, but it was the only chance they had. If they could reverse engineer the ship's technology, they might stand a chance of evening the odds. His team infiltrated the crash site under the cover of darkness. The Zorvani, though omnipresent, were not invincible. They made mistakes. The humans had learned to exploit them. The raid was chaotic. Gunfire rang through the night, and the sound of alien voices reverberated through the ruins. But in the end, the mission succeeded. The team managed to steal a small cache of alien energy cells and several intact data drives, enough to give the resistance a foothold in understanding the invaders' technology. Reyes, bloody but determined, returned to the survivors with the spoils of war. As the data was decrypted, the first glimmer of hope emerged. The humans had found something they could work with. The resistance had begun, and it wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for revenge. And Reyes knew that this was just the beginning. The Zorvani had underestimated humanity's will to survive, and now humanity was going to make them regret it. The aftermath of the Chicago raid was both a victory and a painful reminder of the price of rebellion. General Reyes, though physically wounded, felt the weight of the losses. Several good men and women were dead, their bodies scattered among the twisted wreckage of Zorvani vehicles. But they had struck a blow, no matter how small, against an empire that had crushed the heart of humanity. In that moment, Reyes understood what the resistance truly needed, not just victories, but a future. Captain Emily Carter, his second in command, had been the one to rally the remaining survivors. Brilliant, pragmatic, and cold when needed, she had quickly taken the mantle of leadership after Reyes was incapacitated. Under her command, the resistance adapted, reorganized, and began to expand. But Carter knew they had little time. The Zorvani weren't oblivious to the increasing number of attacks on their supply lines, and they would soon begin tightening their grip on the survivors who remained scattered in the dark corners of Earth. The resistance operated in shadows, hidden in old bunkers, underground facilities, and forgotten military bases, waiting for their chance to strike. Their resources were sparse, their numbers even more so. But Carter refused to back down. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about winning back what had been lost. She had seen entire families crushed, entire cities turned to dust. The memories of those faces haunted her, fueling her every decision. Then came the breakthrough. A team of engineers and scientists working on the Zorveni technology had managed to activate one of the alien data drives. The information was incomplete, but it was enough. They had uncovered blueprints for a Zorveni energy shield, something humanity could never have hoped to develop on its own. It was a revelation that gave Carter a new sense of purpose. If they could find a way to replicate the shield, they might just stand a fighting chance against the invaders' superior weaponry. But Carter knew the next mission would be even more dangerous than the last. The Zorveni were tightening their hold on Earth, and any significant human activity would be met with swift and deadly retaliation. They would have to move fast and silent. She chose a small, specialized team of operatives, each handpicked for their skills in stealth, combat, and technology. Among them was Ethan, a former hacker turned field operative whose ability to manipulate Zorveni communications had already saved their lives more than once. Then there was Leela, an explosives expert who had perfected the art of destruction with little more than her hands and a few scraps of equipment. Finally, there was Malik, a former fighter pilot whose experience with Zorveni tech would be crucial in understanding their energy systems. Together, they would infiltrate a high-security Zorveni facility deep in the heart of an occupied city. The operation was complex. They would have to disable a Zorveni communications hub, extract critical data on the energy shield, and return without alerting the occupying forces. Failure meant not only death but the destruction of the only hope humanity had left. The night before the mission, Carter stood outside their underground base, looking out over the ruined cityscape. The lights of the resistance camp flickered behind her, a small but defiant beacon in the darkness. They had no choice but to win this war. If they didn't, Earth would become a graveyard for humanity's once great civilization. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore," Carter whispered to herself. "We're fighting for revenge." At dawn, the team set out under the cover of night, moving through abandoned tunnels and ruined streets. The city, once teeming with life, now felt like a graveyard, silent, broken, haunted by the ghosts of the past. The resistance had learned to move undetected, but even the most careful plans could unravel when dealing with an enemy as powerful and ruthless as the Zorveni. The clock was ticking. As Carter's team infiltrated the heart of the Zorveni base, the tension was unbearable. Each step felt heavier than the last, but they couldn't afford to hesitate. They had a chance, just a small one, but it was all they needed to turn the tide. And just as the team reached the heart of the Zorveni facility, disaster struck. An alarm blared, signaling that their presence had been detected. The time for quiet sabotage was over. It was time for war. The alarm sounded like a death knell. Carter's heart raced as the harsh wail of Zorveni sirens echoed through the base, alerting every soldier, every drone, and every weapon system within 100 miles. The quiet, covered operation they had planned for months had just turned into a desperate fight for survival. "Move!" Carter shouted, her voice cutting through the panic that threatened to grip her team. "We've got what we came for. Now we get out." Ethan, the former hacker, had already begun to scramble the Zorveni security networks, sending the base's alert systems into disarray. A temporary victory. Lila, the explosives expert, was already planting charges at key choke points in the facility, her movements fast and deliberate. Malik was scouting ahead, his keen eyes and pilot instincts putting him one step ahead of the Zorveni forces. Carter's mind raced. They had obtained crucial data on the energy shield, but they were nowhere near the extraction point. The Zorveni were closing in from all directions, their foot soldiers already pouring into the lower levels of the facility, their sleek black armor reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights overhead. "Split up," Carter commanded. "Ethan, get those communications scrambled. Malik, cover R6. Layla with me. We're blowing through to the north exit. Go. They sprinted through the corridors, gunfire erupting in the distance as the Zorvani forces began to target their movements. Carter's pulse surged with adrenaline as she led Layla down a narrow hallway. Each step brought them closer to the exit, but the Zorvani were relentless. They couldn't outrun them forever. Suddenly, a heavy blast rattled the walls, sending debris tumbling around them. Carter ducked instinctively, pulling Layla out of the blast radius. A Zorvani assault team had breached the southern corridor, cutting off their escape route. "Not good," Layla muttered, pulling a set of grenades from her belt. "We need to clear them out or we're done for." "Do it," Carter ordered, her voice low and steady. "But make it fast." Layla's eyes glinted with grim determination as she tossed a pair of grenades down the hallway. There was a deafening roar of explosions, followed by the unmistakable sound of Zorvani armor being shredded. But they couldn't stay to see the results. The team continued their rush through the facility, knowing every second counted. Meanwhile, Ethan's fingers flew across his makeshift control station, his eyes darting between his tablet and the overhead security cameras. "I've got their comms in disarray, but they're figuring it out. We need to get out of here now, Captain." Just as Carter's team reached the exit point, a Zorvani dreadnought, an enormous vehicle designed for maximum destruction, rolled into the facility courtyard. It fired a high-intensity laser beam across the path, severing a section of the building. There was no way they could outrun it, not with the Zorvani closing in from all sides. Malik, ever the pilot, reacted first. His eyes widened as he spotted a small transport shuttle parked in a nearby hangar. "Captain, I'll take care of the heavy lifting. Get to the shuttle. We'll cover you from there." The team didn't hesitate. Carter nodded sharply, signaling them to move out. The heavy artillery fire from the dreadnought punctuated their footsteps, but they pressed on. Carter's heart pounded in her chest as they dashed toward the shuttle, her mind already strategizing their next move. As they neared the ship, Ethan was the first to reach the controls, his hands working quickly to power up the shuttle's engines. The Zorvani dreadnought had targeted them directly now, and the shuttle's shields flared to life just as the first volley of plasma fire collided with the ground near them. Leela, standing at the rear of the shuttle, dropped a final set of grenades, creating an explosion so fierce it sent shockwaves through the facility. "We're clear. Get in," Leela yelled. Carter climbed aboard, taking a moment to glance back at the devastation they had wrought. The Zorvani were still reeling from their counterattack, but they had no illusion about the danger ahead. They had stolen invaluable data, but at a cost. The humans had just made themselves a target. As the shuttle's engines roared to life and the team ascended into the night sky, Carter took a deep breath. The escape was a close call, but it was just the beginning. They had struck a blow against the Zorvani, but the war was far from over. "Let's get back to base," Carter said, her voice hard. "We have work to do." And as the shuttle sped away from the smoke and ruins of the Zorvani facility, Carter knew one thing for certain. Humanity had just found its edge. The resistance had tasted blood, and now they would make the invaders pay for every inch they had stolen. The days that followed the raid on the Zorvani facility were tense. The data they had stolen, encrypted blueprints for the Zorvani's advanced energy shield, was invaluable, but it was only a small piece of the puzzle. Carter knew that to win, they needed something far more significant, a weapon capable of crippling the Zorvani's hold on Earth, and the answer came from an unexpected source. Ethan, the hacker, had been scouring through the Zorvani data when he stumbled upon a classified project buried deep within their military archives. A weapon so powerful it could change the course of the war, the pulse cannon, a system designed to disrupt entire fleets of ships by emitting a massive electromagnetic pulse, rendering anything in its radius completely useless. If the resistance could harness it, they could strike at the heart of the Zorvani's orbiting armada and cripple their entire satellite network. The problem, of course, was getting to it. The pulse cannon was housed in a heavily guarded facility on the moon's dark side, a fortress that the Zorvani had turned into a military stronghold. A near-impenetrable fortress that no one, human or alien, had ever breached. But Carter, ever the strategist, was undeterred. She knew the risks, but she also knew they had no choice. Without the pulse cannon, Earth stood little chance of reclaiming its skies. If the Zorveni could maintain their orbital supremacy, the resistance would never be able to fight back on equal terms. "We'll need a team," Carter said, addressing the handful of trusted leaders in the underground base. "A small, specialized team to infiltrate their fortress. It's a suicide mission, but we have no other option. Do we have anyone who can pull this off?" The room was silent for a moment. Then Malik, the former fighter pilot, spoke up. "I've flown Zorveni ships before. I can get us close to their facility undetected, but we'll need a fast extraction once the pulse cannon is in our hands. It's not going to be easy." Carter nodded. "We'll also need a distraction, a big one. Ethan, can you hack their security grid to buy us some time?" Ethan cracked his knuckles, grinning. "Leave that to me. I've been studying their comm systems. I'll give you a window, but you'll need to move fast." Leela, always ready for a fight, crossed her arms. "I'm in. I've got the explosives ready for when things get complicated." And just like that, they were set. The plan was simple: infiltrate the fortress, take control of the pulse cannon, and escape before the Zorveni could retaliate. The execution, however, was anything but simple. Under the cover of darkness, Carter's team launched their assault, boarding a stolen Zorveni shuttle that Malik expertly piloted toward the moon. The plan was to slit past the Zorveni's outer defenses using their own encryption codes stolen during a previous raid and enter the facility undetected. If they were discovered, there would be no time for a second chance. As the shuttle neared the moon's surface, Carter's pulse quickened. The immense fortress loomed ahead, a dark, imposing structure that seemed impenetrable. But inside, they knew, was humanity's only hope. "Landing in 5, Malik said, his eyes locked on the controls. "Get ready." The shuttle touched down silently on a remote landing pad, hidden from the Zorveni's main security systems. The team disembarked quickly, moving in a tight formation as Ethan scrambled to hack the first layer of the facility's security. They moved through airlocks and corridors, using Zorveni uniforms to blend in with the occasional patrolling alien. The tension in the air was palpable, but Carter remained focused. "Straight to the pulse cannon," Carter muttered. "Don't engage unless you have no choice." As they neared the heart of the facility, the hum of Zorveni technology filled the air, a constant reminder of the enemy's overwhelming power. Then they found it, the pulse cannon, a massive, weaponized structure capable of taking down entire fleets in one strike. But it was heavily guarded. "Shit," Lila whispered, surveying the room. "There's no way we can just walk in." "Cover me," Carter ordered, already moving toward a control console. "I'll disable the power grid. Once the shields are down, we can take it." Just as Carter's fingers grazed the console, alarms blared throughout the facility. Ethan cursed under his breath. "We're out of time," he shouted. "They've spotted us." Before Carter could respond, the ground shook as Zorveni reinforcements flooded into the room. The team's plan had gone from infiltration to all-out battle in a heartbeat. "Do it now, Carter," Malik yelled, taking cover behind a pillar as blaster fire rained down on them. Carter slammed her hand on the console, her heart pounding as the pulse cannon systems powered down. The room filled with a blinding light as the weapon activated, its pulse vibrating through the air. The team was going to get what they came for, but they weren't out of danger yet. "Move," Carter barked. "We're not done yet." As the pulse cannon systems hummed to life, they had mere minutes before the Zorveni struck back in full force. There was no turning back now. This was their chance to cripple the invaders once and for all. The pulse cannon hummed ominously as Carter's team scrambled to make their escape. The sound of Zorveni reinforcements closing in sent a chill through her, but the weapon's activation gave her a fleeting sense of triumph. They had what they came for, but at what cost? "Time's running out," Malik shouted, his voice tight with urgency as he scanned the facility's monitors. "The Zorveni are mobilizing a full-scale response. They'll have us cornered in minutes." Carter didn't need to hear it again. She motioned for Ethan to move. Get to the control room and scramble their comms. Lila, cover the rear. Malik, we're heading for the shuttle. Now. The team moved with grim precision, retracing their steps through the darkened hallways. But every corner turned felt like a countdown to their death. The Zorvani were no fools. Their response time had been swift, and they would soon flood the corridors, trapping the humans inside their fortress. As they reached a critical junction, a door hissed open, and a dozen Zorvani soldiers poured out, their black armor glinting under the flickering lights. Carter's heart stuttered. They'd been ambushed. Ambushed now, she barked. Without hesitation, Lila tossed 2 grenades into the approaching group of soldiers, the explosion reverberating through the narrow corridor. The shockwave sent several Zorvani crashing to the ground, their weapons falling from their hands. But the explosion was only a temporary reprieve. The Zorvani forces had backup, and their reinforcements were already advancing, weapons ready. Carter dove behind a row of crates, pulling out her sidearm and opening fire. The Zorvani responded with brutal efficiency, their plasma rifles lighting up the room with deadly beams. Malik provided cover, returning fire as he retreated toward the exit. But it wasn't enough. They were being pinned down, the enemy's numbers too great, the pressure mounting. Ethan, Carter shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Do you have it? Ethan, hunched over a hacked terminal, looked up with wide eyes. I'm almost there, but the security is, they're locking me out. We need more time. The tension in Carter's chest tightened. They couldn't afford to lose this advantage. Not now, not when they were so close. She looked at Layla, her expression resolute. Make it happen, Carter ordered. Layla nodded and tossed another grenade, her quick fingers setting the timer. The blast threw the Zorvani soldiers off balance, giving the team just enough breathing room. They broke into a sprint, heading for the exit. Carter's mind raced as she calculated their chances of making it back to the shuttle. It was slim. The Zorvani would soon be pouring into every corner of the facility, ready to reclaim their weapon and neutralize the human threat. They reached the shuttle hangar with seconds to spare, but the sight that greeted them wasn't the escape they hoped for. The Zorvani had already disabled the shuttle's engines. There would be no easy getaway. We've been compromised. Malik cursed, his fists pounding the shuttle's control panel in frustration. Carter's mind was working overtime. No, not here, not now. They had come too far. They had the pulse cannon's data, but they couldn't let it end in a Zorvani trap. Ethan, can you get that shuttle moving? Carter demanded. Ethan didn't hesitate. Give me a minute. Layla scanned the hangar, her eyes darting between the exits and the shadows of approaching Zorvani. We don't have a minute, she said coldly. Get that shuttle working, or we'll have no way out. Carter's gaze met hers, a silent agreement passing between them. They weren't going to die here. Not today. Just as the sound of enemy boots began to echo in the hangar, Ethan's voice rang out. It's done. We've got control over the shuttle systems, but it's gonna be a rough takeoff. We don't have time for smooth, Carter replied. Lift off, now. With a hum of engines sputtering to life, the shuttle's wings slowly began to open. Malik, ever the pilot, jumped into the cockpit, adjusting the controls. Hold on, everyone. It's gonna get bumpy. The shuttle shot upward, the entire hangar shaking as the Zorvani turned their weapons on the small vessel. Blasts of energy pinged off the shuttle's shields, but they held. The hangar door slammed open, and with a final surge of speed, the shuttle rocketed out of the facility, narrowly avoiding a direct hit from a Zorvani plasma cannon. As the shuttle broke through the atmosphere, Carter allowed herself a moment to breathe, though she knew the fight wasn't over. The Zorvani would come after them with everything they had. But in that instant, they had won something far greater than just a single battle. They had stolen a piece of their enemy's heart, a weapon that could change everything. The team, battered and bruised but alive, glanced at each other. The cost of their victory was steep, but the resistance had just acquired the power to strike back in ways the invaders had never anticipated. We've got the weapon, Carter said, her voice resolute. Now let's make sure they regret ever stepping foot on Earth. The days that followed their escape from the Zorveni moon base were filled with a mixture of triumph and tension. They had secured the data on the pulse cannon, but the Zorveni were not known for their patience. Carter and her team knew that the invaders would be relentless in their pursuit. The clock was ticking, and the fragile peace they had bought with their daring escape was rapidly running out. Back at the Resistance's hidden base, Carter wasted no time in organizing their next move. The pulse cannon was the key to turning the tide of the war, but its true power lay in how they would use it. The technology wasn't something that could be replicated easily. No, they would need to transport the data to Earth's largest remaining military installation, an underground complex known as the Citadel. Only there could the engineers and scientists of the Resistance unlock the full potential of the weapon. But getting to the Citadel was no simple task. "The Zorveni will know we're making a move," Ethan said, his voice quiet but heavy with the knowledge of the danger they faced. "They'll be tracking us from every direction." "We'll be ready," Carter replied, her gaze steady. "They won't be able to stop us if we move fast and stay smart." With the fate of humanity hanging in the balance, Carter knew the Resistance couldn't afford to falter. The plan was simple in theory: use a small, covert strike team to infiltrate the area surrounding the Citadel, bypassing the Zorveni's surveillance grid and getting the pulse cannon data to the hands of Earth's remaining military leaders. But Carter had learned the hard way that even the simplest plans could fall apart under pressure. The Zorveni had been one step ahead of them every time, and there was no reason to believe this would be any different. As night fell, Malik prepared the team for their most dangerous mission yet. The shuttle they had stolen from the Zorveni moon base was prepped and ready for a quick takeoff, but the flight path they would take was anything but safe. They would have to navigate through a series of dense, heavily patrolled zones where the Zorveni had established strongholds. The key to their success would lie in staying undetected long enough to reach the Citadel's proximity. Carter paced in front of the makeshift briefing table, her mind running through every possible scenario. "We move like ghosts," she instructed her team. "No noise, no trace. If they detect us before we reach the Citadel, we'll have no choice but to fight our way out. And that's a battle we can't win yet." Leela stood at the back of the room, her expression focused as she checked the ammunition in her weapons belt. "If it comes to that, I'm ready. But we need to make sure we don't leave a trail." Ethan, always the pragmatist, looked up from his tablet. "The Zorveni are good, but we've been playing this game longer than they think. I can scramble their radar systems, disrupt their comms. That'll give us a window. And then we move," Carter said, her voice cold with determination. "We take the pulse cannon data to the Citadel, and we make sure the Zorveni never see it coming." As the shuttle took off into the night, Carter felt the weight of the mission settle in. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and vastly outmatched by an enemy that seemed to grow stronger by the day. But they had something the Zorveni didn't: humanity's will to survive. And that, Carter knew, was an edge the invaders would never understand. The shuttle sped through the sky, cutting through the dark expanse above Earth. Each passing minute felt like an eternity. They had a narrow window before the Zorveni detected their approach, and the tension was palpable. The stars outside the shuttle's windows seemed to swirl, an endless black sea punctuated by the occasional flash of distant enemy ships. The Zorveni had a presence everywhere, above, below, and across the globe. "ETA to the Citadel in 10 minutes, Malik called from the cockpit. His voice was steady, but even he couldn't hide that hint of anxiety. "Let's make this count." The team nodded, their faces hard with resolve. There would be no second chances. They had come this far, and they weren't going to let the Zorveni take that away. As they neared the edge of the Citadel's perimeter, Ethan's hands flew across his tablet, scrambling the Zorveni communications once again. There was a soft click, followed by the telltale flash of the Zorveni radar's interference. The shuttle's cloaking systems flickered into place, rendering them invisible to the naked eye. "We're in," Ethan said, exhaling in relief. "For now." But Carter knew the real battle was just beginning. The closer they got to the Citadel, the more dangerous things would become. The Zorveni were a constant presence, their forces constantly probing for weaknesses. Any misstep could spell disaster for humanity's last hope. Carter looked at her team one last time, her voice low but unwavering. We get the data to the command center. We fight our way through if we have to, but we cannot fail. The Resistance's last stand was about to begin. The shuttle glided silently through the night sky, cloaked by Ethan's modifications and the careful piloting of Malik. But even with all their precautions, Carter knew they were skating on the edge of a razor-sharp knife. The Citadel was humanity's last bastion, hidden beneath the mountains where the Zorvani's sensors barely reached. But that didn't mean the Resistance was safe. The Zorvani were relentless, and they would stop at nothing to eliminate any threat. They would sense their presence soon. Carter sat in the shuttle's dimmed cockpit, her eyes scanning the distant horizon. The landscape below was dark, broken only by the occasional flicker of lights from human settlements, now heavily guarded and barely holding on. Every inch of Earth was a battlefield, every corner a reminder of how far the Zorvani had pushed them. But tonight, they had a chance to take back what had been stolen. ETA to the Citadel is 5 minutes. Malik's voice broke the silence, pulling Carter from her thoughts. Stay sharp. The team nodded in unison, the tension in the shuttle palpable. Lila was checking her gear, her fingers brushing over the explosives strapped to her waist. She wasn't just prepared for a fight, she was ready to make a statement. If they had to fight, they would do it on their terms, and no amount of Zorvani firepower would stop them. Ethan was at the back of the shuttle, fingers flying over his tablet as he worked on one last round of hacking to scramble the Zorvani's orbital sensors. They're closing in on our position, he muttered under his breath. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they realize we're here. Carter exhaled slowly. Then we need to make this quick. As the shuttle neared the perimeter of the Citadel, the harsh reality of the operation hit her. They weren't just delivering data, they were delivering hope. Earth's last weapon against the invaders, the key to their survival, was nestled in the very core of that base. They couldn't afford any mistakes. They couldn't afford to fail. The shuttle's engines hummed as they descended toward the landing platform. The area was covered in a thick layer of fog, the moonlight barely breaking through the low clouds. Even from this distance, Carter could see the faint outlines of Zorvani's surveillance drones patrolling the area, their glowing sensors scanning the horizon for any signs of trouble. They've already seen us, Ethan said, his voice a low growl of frustration. It's not just the radar anymore. They're sending drones after us. Then it's time we take this fight to them, Carter responded, her jaw tightening. She knew they had no time to waste. The shuttle would be vulnerable once they touched down. Malik expertly guided the shuttle toward the landing pad nestled among the cliffs. But just as they were nearing the final approach, an explosion rocked the sky. A Zorvani drone, hidden in the clouds, had detected them. The blast was a warning shot, but it was enough to confirm that they were no longer unseen. The Zorvani knew exactly where they were. We're not going to make it without a fight, Malik said, already prepping for a hard landing. Don't worry about that, Carter replied, locking eyes with her team. We'll get there no matter what. It's our only shot. The shuttle slammed into the landing pad with a heavy jolt, the emergency brakes screeching as they skidded to a halt. Without missing a beat, Carter was out the door, sprinting toward the entrance to the Citadel. The others followed, weapons raised and ready for anything. But they didn't have much time. Ethan, get the security systems online, Carter commanded. We need the doors open now. Ethan was already hacking into the facility's network, his fingers flying across the interface. I'm in. I'll get you access in 30 seconds. Just hold them off. As the doors to the Citadel creaked open, the first wave of Zorvani soldiers appeared from the fog, their weapons glowing menacingly in the darkness. They had no intention of letting the humans pass through undisturbed. Lila was the first to fire, her heavy rifle booming as she took down the leading soldier. We've got company, she yelled. The team ducked behind cover, exchanging fire with the Zorvani. The sound of plasma rifles and energy bolts filled the air, lighting up the darkened landscape. But even as the resistance fought for their lives, they knew they couldn't hold out long. They needed to get inside. They needed to finish this. Done. Ethan shouted as the security door slammed open with a hiss. Move. Without hesitation, Carter led the charge, her boots pounding against the metal floor of the entryway. The rest of the team followed, pushing forward into the heart of the citadel. Behind them, the sounds of battle echoed through the darkened corridor. The Zorveni weren't far behind, and this time they weren't alone. The full force of their military presence was closing in, but Carter's heart burned with the fire of defiance. They had come too far to turn back. Get to the data core, she ordered, her voice steady but urgent. We're almost there. The pulse cannon's future rested in the hands of Earth's last resistance. They had no choice but to fight. The heavy doors of the citadel slammed shut behind them, the metallic clang echoing through the cavernous hallways. The resistance was inside, but there was no time to savor the small victory. The Zorveni would be here soon, and they would come with everything they had. But Carter couldn't afford to think about that now. They were so close, so painfully close, to completing the mission. Move out, to the data core now, Carter barked, her voice cutting through the adrenaline-fueled chaos. The team surged forward, their weapons raised and eyes darting between every shadow. Every hallway, every corridor seemed to echo with the heavy footsteps of their enemies. They had no idea how much time they had left, but Carter knew one thing for sure. They couldn't afford to be caught here. The future of humanity rested on what they could do in the next few minutes. We've got incoming. Lila called out, her rifle flashing as she mowed down the first wave of Zorveni soldiers that appeared at the far end of the hall. Carter didn't look back. She couldn't. The data core was their priority. The pulse cannon could shift the balance of power in the war, but only if they could unlock its full potential before the Zorveni reached them. They turned a corner, and the sight of the data core entrance loomed ahead. It was a massive door, guarded by Zorveni soldiers who had clearly anticipated their arrival. Three guards stood at the ready, their plasma rifles raised in unison. A cold rush of dread washed over Carter, but it was replaced instantly by a surge of fury. Leela, Malik, cleared the right flank. Carter ordered, her eyes narrowing as she assessed the situation. Ethan, get to the terminal now. The team exploded into action. Lila and Malik broke right, their weapons opening fire and forcing the Zorveni to take cover. The soldiers' return fire was immediate, but Carter and the others were already moving, fluid and fast, each step carrying them closer to their goal. Ethan didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the terminal embedded in the wall next to the core, his fingers already swiping across his tablet to interface with the system. The door to the core opened slowly, but it wouldn't be long before reinforcements arrived. Done. Ethan called out, his voice taut with urgency. I've got access. Get in, get the data, and let's go. Carter nodded sharply, stepping through the doorway into the heart of the citadel. Inside, rows of terminals hummed with power, and in the center, a massive data drive blinked red, waiting to be accessed. The pulse cannon's schematics and control codes were stored there, humanity's last hope in the war against the Zorveni. But before they could make it to the terminal, the air shimmered with an unnatural stillness. A deep, resonating sound filled the chamber. A Zorveni commander stepped out from the shadows, his armor gleaming darkly in the dim lights of the chamber. He was massive, easily 7 feet tall, and his presence radiated authority. Behind him, the last line of soldiers flanked him, ready to defend the core at all costs. You are too late, the Zorveni commander said in a cold, mechanical voice, his hand resting on the hilt of a glowing sword. The war is already decided. You cannot win. Carter didn't flinch. Instead, she met his gaze with unwavering resolve. We don't need to win. We just need to make sure you never get to finish what you started. With a roar, the battle erupted. Lila and Malik were already in motion, engaging the Zorveni soldiers with precise and deadly force. The Zorveni commander raised his weapon, the air crackling with energy as he lunged toward Carter. Her pulse raced, but she stood firm. The weapon he wielded was unlike anything they had faced before. Its energy pulses were devastating, each strike capable of cutting through steel like paper. Carter dove to the side, narrowly dodging a strike that would have severed her in half. She fired back with her sidearm, but the blasts only bounced off his armor. We need to end this fast. Behind her, Ethan was busy downloading the pulse cannon data, his face etched with concentration. I'm almost there, he said, but we need to buy time. Layla was the first to close in, charging the commander with a fierce battle cry. Her agility allowed her to dodge his strikes, delivering several devastating blows to his midsection. Malik joined in, providing cover fire as Layla danced around the commander, her rifle blazing. The Zorveni commander roared in frustration, swiping his sword in an arc that sent both Layla and Malik skidding back. But Carter was already on the move, rushing forward with a flash of steel in her hand. The blade of a Zorveni soldier she had disarmed earlier was now in her grip, and she wasn't about to let this monster stand in their way. She struck fast and precise, catching the commander off guard. Her blade cut through his armor with surprising ease, and he staggered back, wounded but not yet defeated. As the battle raged on, Ethan's voice rang out, louder than the sounds of combat. "I've got it," he shouted, holding up the data chip. Without another word, Carter grabbed the chip, her heart pounding. "Let's move now." But the fight wasn't over. The Zorveni weren't done yet, and neither were humanity's last defenders.